Welcome to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts. And now your host, Mike D. and JD.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Label. Welcome back to our second episode in a series. We haven't done this before, so it's our first shot. I am Mike D.
I'm JD.
And I'm Tom Shannon.
How's it going, guys?
There you go.
Good.
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, we made it on here, so that's half the battle. It's if they can see the behind the scenes stuff, that's really where it gets crazy. But hey,
a little bit of WebEx, a little bit of TeamViewer.
Hey, no, I wanted to. Last episode we had past Chief Tom Hooker on, and we talked about my experiences with the Pittsford Fire Department and how I've become a member there and what that's like with a disability. And the topic kind of stemmed from an episode of Blue Bloods on CBS a couple of weeks ago. I find and Michael, we talked quite a bit, and Assistant Chief Shannon and I talked quite a bit. My wife says actually I should just go live at your guys' house because I'm on the phone with either one of you more than I talk to her. But anyways, a couple of weeks ago there's this episode of Blue Bloods, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty neat. We're starting to see disabilities become more mainstream on TV. They had a detective on there who the storyline was that she got shot, and she was paralyzed and now in a wheelchair. And her story sounded a lot like mine, and in a different kind of way. I think ever since I was little, I was always told that I could do anything I wanted to do, and if I just put my mind to it and figured out ways to do it. And so that's what I've done. And for those of you who don't know how the fire service and the EMS service and the police service works, I mean, we're pretty fortunate in the little town that we're in to be volunteer, but when you get outside in New York City where the show is set, those are paid departments. And so basically most of those departments, if you can't function like everybody else, then you no longer have a job. And this lady's point was, look, there's nothing wrong with my brains, there's nothing wrong with what I know, there's nothing wrong with my spidey sense, if you will. It's just my legs. And she said, I want you to keep me on my job. And they're like, well, we'll give you a desk job. And she said, that's not the point. And I'm like, hey, this is finally cool. And
it's a great topic.
Yeah, and it all kind of coincided with the fact that some folks around the organization said, you talk about a lot about martial arts in your podcast, but you do a lot of other crazy stuff. And I said, crazy stuff? It's just all in a day's work. And they said, yeah, you need to talk more about, your Spartan races and the fire department and things like that. And I thought, this is a great topic, and I'm so glad to see that it's on TV now, that I think we can expand upon it. And so I brought these guys, my other family, in to tell you their side of life with me and what it's like to be around somebody with a disability and count on them to kind of be your lifeline at times. So, as I said, my good friend and Assistant Chief Tom Shannon is willing to join us tonight to talk a little bit about that. Thanks for being here, Tom.
You're welcome. No big deal.
Yeah, so basically, Tom, the other Tom that we met last episode, he and his partner, former Assistant Chief Shah, decided to put me on the fire department and that I would do dispatch. And then shortly after that, they retired from their positions, and we've got a new chief and a new assistant chief.
And Tom got stuck with you.
Yeah, and so Tom, I mean, we've known each other since I was a kid, but I mean, from an administrative standpoint, when you're the chief of a department like that, and you've got this thing thrown on your lap, like I got a disabled guy that's on my fire department, and you know my capabilities, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I'm smart enough to know that you have to explain my capabilities to a lot of people that are higher up the food chain. And so, what was that like, first of all, and then what do you say to that?
Well, I mean, the other two chiefs, obviously, they left us in a pretty good place, right? I mean, I can't complain anything that Tommy and Butch had done. And, you know, so bringing you on, of course, I was an officer at that time. I was a captain. So we were in the discussion of it. And between the radio room and the paperwork, it's a full-time job, right? So when you came and approached Tommy on it, he approached us and we discussed it. And, you know, I said, well, we give it a try. I mean, we obviously need somebody inside the firehouse when we're out on a fire call, because who mans the radio when we're gone? Who's making the phone calls when you're out, you know, in the woods and you need something else for, you know, manpower, or even simple thing as who's ordering the pizzas, right? You got to feed your guys, so you got to have somebody that'll order the pizzas, and then we can go get them. But somebody's actually got to pick up a phone. And
so that's
a lot
the
of
real,
times,
that's
right?
the real.
I mean, a lot of times you don't have the time to do that. I mean, administration in the fire department is big. I mean, you know, right? We talk on almost a daily basis, it seems like these days, trying to either get our technology lined up and working correctly. And so
It's so what you're really saying is you took me on and kept me on for the pizza. I see.
Yeah, that's all it was for the pizza, though. Well, I mean, what else do you do, right? I mean, we got in the Google Drive world so that I can send you my paperwork during the COVID, right? Because obviously you can't really catch COVID, you know. So we've worked pretty good here in the last, 2 weeks of back and forth with Google Drive and moving the security cameras so you can access them from your office.
Well, and that's kind of, as we get into this, that's what I want to talk a little bit more about. So you bring me on, and obviously, as Tom said last episode, you know, there was some friction within the firehouse there. I mean, not from those who knew me or really knew me like you guys did, or not for those that suggested it, but there was some friction there. So I'm an open book. You know, talk about that a little bit, and talk about the, how you came to a decision. If you got, 30...
Well, there's a lot of debating going on back and forth in the office, So luckily for your case, right? I mean, you're a neighborhood kid like me. You're right in the same neighborhood. I watched you grow up. I've watched. Really, nothing stopped you to do what you wanted to do. I mean, you never gave in to any of your disability, right? I mean, should you'd had a wheelchair, earlier in life, maybe, but you didn't want to have that, right? And so Jason's family has this disability in the family, right? I mean, so my neighbor is related to Jason, which I saw their people come up from Connecticut, Massachusetts with their kids. Yeah. So I got to see it all. So I could advocate really good for Jason because he didn't give up on anything. And then, the younger guys went to school with you, right? The lieutenants were in there at that time, Sean and those guys, they knew him. So a lot of advocating and what can we do with them? What can we do with a person with disability? And really, I mean, our radio room gets kind of hectic on major calls, and to keep the paperwork right and to keep accountability right. It was a good match for Jason, I thought. So I kind of stood on his side on that one.
And how do you answer for the questions that come from higher ups about capability, or we talked about last night, my nickname around the firehouse, the same as everybody else, and how if you don't understand the camaraderie of the firehouse, you might not understand the nickname and that kind of thing. How do you handle that, and how do you speak to that stuff?
Well, it's tough, right? I mean, Jason came to my place of work, and we joke around with it a lot. It doesn't offend Jason, but it does offend other people. I mean, we were laughing about it on the phone the other day, and he tipped over. I picked him up. And probably said what I shouldn't have said, but it was firehouse stuff, and we're a brotherhood at the firehouse, so it's like picking your own brother up off the floor, and you're like, God damn it, stand up.
Can't you stay on your freaking feet?
So my boss, after Jason and Katie left, he called me out on it. He's like, you can't do that. He says, you came from a school background. I said, yeah, I know. And then during the school years, I'd never do that. I said, you got to understand the camaraderie of the fire department, right? We're all brothers and sisters on our department, and we stand behind one another. And it was just like if it was your brother tipped over, and you're like, stand up, man. So,
yeah. I mean, we talk about that. We talk about that all the time. I mean, I've known Jason since, God, I think it was right around the time we were turning 18, right? 17, yeah, 18, yeah. JD. And we used to, when we worked at the radio station, we'd have to go up and down these stairs, and there was no elevator. Like it was a really interesting setup where you were in between floors. Like there was an elevator in the building, and the elevator could get you to the bathroom, but the elevator didn't get to this like mezzanine tier. So there's like 13 steps up or 13 steps down to go to the restroom. And Jason always needed somebody to go with him. So like you'd be in the middle of producing a commercial or recording a bit, and JD's like, I gotta hit the head. It's like, crap. I mean, we say it with a kind heart, but it's like, well, we're happy to stop and help JD get to the bathroom, yeah. But you give him shit the whole way there and the whole way back, right?
Yeah, and so when he came on to the fire department, a lot of people didn't realize that about him, that he had a very good sense of humor about his disability. So, and they're just thinking, oh boy, what are we going to do with a disability kid on here now? He can't come to the fires. How are we going to drag hose? He can't drive trucks because we're not set up. And it's like, what are we going to do? And I was like, just settle down. I mean, we've basically taken him on for administration part, which none of us want to do. And, half the fire department's old, so they're like petrified of technology. So it's like, who's putting in our federal, stuff all the time? I mean, you got to do that stuff every time that we go out. You got to put the stuff in. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. Right. Because during teaching school, I didn't want to do it. It's like, yeah, let Jason do it.
And no offense to you guys, but you're terrible at paperwork. Even still, I'm like, who filled this piece of paper out? Like, and my name's on the thing, so if it comes back, it's coming back to me.
It's going back to you, not me.
So it's like,
look, I got you a camera now. I've got you the internet going down there. One more new. I've told everybody. I put your name on. No, I haven't put your name on the whiteboard yet.
I'd like to. And since you're asking me what I'd like a nice, raised platform above the apparatus floor with some glass around it.
Yeah, and an elevator too, right?
That's right. If you can,
an elevator.
If you can
get right on that. That'll be the next station.
If you can,
I have
swing,
what you should do?
YouTube, right? I mean, if you watch, I like watching YouTube, and I'm big on fire department stuff and learning. And you see that in a lot of big fire departments is, oh my God, their radio room is elevated, and they can look on the apparatus floor, they can see everything that's going on, and they can talk. And I'm like, oh, we don't have that much money though.
Yeah. Well, you don't actually need an elevator. What you need is a platform on pulleys, and you're all firefighters, right? Just pull them up.
We don't have time for that. Tell them get out of the way when we're running in to go to the fire. If you get out of the way, we got to go.
So Tom, you talked about the initial reception of the guys being like, how's this going to work? He's going to get in the way. We joked about it when we recorded the previous episode where we were just saying, it's not like JD's going to be the guy on the ladder on the third floor pulling somebody out of the fire, right? There are obviously, as much as Jason is of the mindset that he can do anything that he puts his mind to, which is great. There's some limitations to that because we have time constraints and all these other things when you're fighting a fire or trying to save people's lives. So JD can still help save those lives, but he's doing it from a different position. So after we kind of got over that initial, or you guys kind of got over that, or your team kind of got over that initial mindset, when did you start to see the attitudes change, and how did that kind of pan out?
Yeah, I don't think it took very long, actually. I mean, Jason would come in, and he'd be there when we got back, basically. Now, maybe some of the older guys were there sitting at the station, but obviously the officers and younger guys were bailing out of there as fast as we can to get to whatever emergency we went to. And,
right.
Sometimes you'd see them coming in, and you just tell them, Jason, you got to stay inside for a minute. We got to go. And, so it worked out good. And then, you got used to the radio, obviously, working at radio, so you could talk on that thing. And we had to move the radios a little bit for Jason's accommodations because he couldn't quite reach it. So we got his office area pretty pimped out in there for him.
It's
nice.
Everybody.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. And I think that a lot of times, we don't, as I said, it's a two-way street here. So as somebody with a disability, if you want to do something like this, if you want to volunteer, if you want to do something that's slightly edgy or out of the ordinary, you've got to be part of the team, and you've got to help yourself, and you've got to let people know what you need, but you've also got to be flexible enough, and you've got to be comfortable enough with yourself to say, look, I want to do this, but that's not really realistic. So you've got.
Well, you said that, right? I mean, a lot of the guys asked you. They said, "Well, we can get you into the pickup truck if you get here quick enough, and we'll bring you in that, and you can do accountability at the scene." And you came right out and said, "Yeah, I don't think so." Right? I mean, so you knew it wasn't where you should be. You should be in the radio room. I mean,
right.
So somebody with disabilities, you got to know your limitations, really. I mean, you can think you're going to do everything, but you got to really be truthful to yourself and say, yeah, I think I'm better well served here. And I mean, it's been a good match for the fire department. I mean, I think.
And really at the end of the day, that is the best spot for me. I mean, not only for my safety and for ease, but for the fire department. I mean, that was a real gap, and it's a lot of work. That's like a full-time job in itself, and I just think that a lot of people, they don't understand that the fire service, there are many different jobs within the fire service that one can have, and so everybody's like, well, I can't go in, or I can't do this. Well, but there are a ton of other things that you can do. So, again,
well, and I got to admit, our own fire department, we're pretty diverse, right? I mean, it's not everybody's got to be PAC certified. Everybody's got to be able to climb the 80-foot ladder. It's okay. What can you do? If you think you want to try ladders, well, we'll put you up on a little one first, or go maybe halfway. I mean, a lot of the younger ones that come on think they can climb. They get about halfway up that 80-foot. It used to be 75, and then they freeze, and it's like, okay, that's enough. Well, let's come back down, and we'll try it again next time. So during that drilling, you're teaching at the same time. It's a comfortable place to get used to it, I guess I should say. And so we have people that aren't going to go inside, aren't going to get really close to the fire. They're going to run a fire truck instead. But I mean, is it a valuable job? I mean, somebody's got to pump me water if I'm running inside the building. So it's a very valuable job. You drive good, okay. Let's make you a pump operator. You're not going to be interior. You don't want to be interior.
So I guess that's what I was saying, Michael, was that the fire service, especially on the volunteer level, is really, it's kind of like having a disability, because they recognize strengths and weaknesses, and so you're just like, well, if this is what you have for a weakness, let's work on that, but let's look at what your strength is and focus on that. And so it's one of the few things where you're able to do that. I mean, you go into the workforce, and work is work, and you've got to kind of fit in, and you got to figure out how to fit in. The fire service for me was a little bit more forgiving. It was like, okay, well, we can adjust things to what you need. And these guys have been great. They're like, well, what would make your life easier? And I said, well, if you, yeah. Did you?
You can finish your thought, but what I was going to say though is, and it's almost a question to Tom, is they do that because you're putting in the same effort that anybody else on the department's going to put in. If you weren't putting in that effort, they wouldn't make the accommodations for you because you'd be quote unquote a waste of space, right? So it's not just they're making and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but they're not just making the accommodations for somebody who showed up with a disability. They're making accommodations for somebody who showed up, works hard, and needs those accommodations to continue working hard and helping the team. Right.
Yeah, that's our whole team atmosphere down there. I mean, we help each other out. I mean, as long as everybody's giving that 110%, we're right on board with you, and we're going to try to help make your life as easy as our lives. And so like I said, we've been working through the COVID with Jason now. Like I said, the chief's not really tech savvy, so and some of the stuff he doesn't like, so I have to work my way around it a little bit and get him to understand, I guess, why it's important to do this. And then so this weekend we moved the camera so that Jason doesn't need to go down there anymore. He can do everything on his computer where he is here in his office. He can fire up the camera that's in the office at the station and see who's in the radio room. And we're going to be working on trying to get him a base unit, so then he could have a radio. He's got a portable right now, so he can talk to us as long as he's in range. Yeah. But maybe we get him a bigger one that he can get out a little bit. With money, that's the hard part, right? Money. Everything's about the money game. So
it's
You don't realize that when you're a lieutenant and a captain, but when you become a chief, everything's a money game now.
Everything's a money game. So does the work? So let's talk about that for a second. And JD, I'm sorry if I'm going off track a little bit. I think this is important to point out. A lot of the paperwork that JD does helps with that aspect of running the department, right? So the federal filings helps with grant money type of thing. Filing stuff for the state helps with. So it keeps the cash flowing, which is just as important as keeping the water flowing in some cases. Otherwise, you wouldn't have equipment to work on, right?
Like I said, Tom, Chief Hooker saw that there was a need for that because we needed to start really doing it. It hasn't been around for a long, long time. And, there was some on there that would fiddle with it a little bit here and there. And, we're going to do it, but then they never did it. And it's really important to get all those numbers in and what you're using for manpower. So if even on insurance companies will call us sometimes, right? They want to reimburse us. So we got to know everything that we've used, how much hose we had out, how many man. So this is the real key part. You got to keep good record keeping on it if you want to get some money back from somebody. If you just say, well, we had a couple trucks here and, 40 guys. And that's what they'll pay for, a couple trucks and 40 guys. But if you can document it, bigger cities, if they go to a car accident, they bill the insurance companies. They know how much hose they put down. They know how many trucks are there, how much manpower. But they have a whole, right? They got administration people doing it for them all the time. Well, on the volunteer, we didn't have anybody like JD to sit down for hours sometimes. I mean, when we were bringing him the run sheets, well, it might be a month before we bring him the run sheet. So now he's got a weekend day or every night he's got to do it. I mean, So we're trying to catch up with technology, right? We all have smartphones now. So I was like, all you got to do is click, take a picture of the front, take a picture of the back, send it to him. He can enter it into the computer, right? We have our paper copy for our files. He's got the computer copy. Boom, done. And it's like, so it works really good. And then Jason picked up the cadet program and ran with that. So,
and we got to take a little break, and then we'll be right back. And I want to talk to you about the cadet program as well as your experience in education and how that all plays into all of this. But one last thing before we do go, Michael, he makes it seem like it's no big deal. Like they're not doing, it's no big deal. This is just what we do for them. But I'm going to tell you, it's above and beyond. It's like I said, they asked me what would make your life easier. So I want a set of cameras, and so they go get the cameras. And we don't want you to get COVID, but we need our papers done. So what can how can we help you? So they're bringing me papers, and it's just, they don't give themselves enough credit for allowing me to do what I do, and I just want you to know that I appreciate that.
So we could talk about that when we get back. Right now, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Century Martial Arts. Century's been a great sponsor of this podcast from the very beginning, and we appreciate their support. So here's a bit.
Beyond the Label, presented by Century Martial Arts for everything that is martial arts. It's no secret, every martial artist, no matter their age, dreams of becoming a legend. A legend. Having their name listed among the greats like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, and Jackie Chan. You can hide it or deny it, but you know it's true. Being a legend takes raw talent, dedication, big breaks, and an ability to survive a roller coaster called fame. But it also takes one more thing to go with it. The best gear and equipment in the world. From the company that is martial arts, Century Martial Arts. They aren't just another martial arts supplier that's never set foot on a mat. They are martial artists, and that means they know their products and use what they sell. From uniforms and training gear to weapons and equipment, Century has it all for every martial arts style. Although you may never be listed among the greats, you can still shop like one at CenturyMartialArts.com and unleash your legend within. Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts. Check them out at CenturyMartialArts.com. Now back to the show with Mike D and JD.
Welcome back to Beyond the Label. We're talking to Tom Shannon today. Tom, you're the chief or the captain?
Assistant chief. Assistant chief.
Got to get the right title right. Assistant chief of the Pittsford Volunteer Fire Department and the is it the Nick Wackett Hose Company. Did I get that right?
Nick Wackett Hose Company. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it right. Woo.
You got
it. I used to drive by and see it all the time. I got it stuck in my head. JD is a member of both the Hose Company and the Fire Department. I'm sure you have some titles too, JD, that I don't remember. But we're actually going to talk about the cadet program, right, JD? A little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I came on, I really I felt like to do my job in dispatch and to do it well, I needed to understand the fire service. Before that, I knew EMS and I knew it inside and out, but I didn't really have an understanding of the fire service. So we would go down for for trainings, and I would just kind of hang back, and if there was something I could try, I tried it. But I was really there to learn the lingo and learn the technical aspects of it. Even though I couldn't put my hands on it, I could tell you how to do it, and it's always been that way for me. I guess with a disability, sometimes the things you can't do, you pay a little more attention and you try to learn them a different way, and that's kind of what I did. And so I learned all of this stuff about firefighting and all the terms, and boy, it made my reports a lot better and things like that. And so they came to me again. I at this time it was Tom Hooker and Bud Shaw, who were the chief and the assistant chief at the time, and they said, "Hey, we had a cadet program on here years ago." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Most of my friends came through it. I was doing rescue, but they were doing fire." And they said, "We noticed that you're pretty good with kids, and you do a lot with people with disabilities and different stuff. Would you mind running the cadet program?" And I said, "You do know I have crutches, right? Like, again, I'm not gonna climb the ladder, bro." And they're like, "No. We want you to manage the cadet program, and we'll find you an assistant to help you with the with the hands-on stuff that you can't do. We just, all these older guys are afraid of the kids, and we don't know how to handle it." I'm like, "That's fine." I'm like, "Oh, I can do that." And so I'm like, what did I get myself into? I don't know anything about teaching people stuff about fire. I think I know a lot, and it drives Katie crazy when we watch a Chicago fire, and I'm telling her, "No, that's not how you do it," but I don't think I'm really qualified to teach kids this. And so I did a ton of research about cadet programs around the country, and really came up with guidelines and plans on how it was going to work. And the key to most of this stuff with the kids was having an outline structure of their expectations and how things were going to be, and then putting myself in their shoes. And it was kind of easy to put myself in their shoes because at the time my experience level was that first class that we did, Tom. I mean, my experience level was close to theirs, so it was like we were learning together. Yeah. And so we just picked some interesting topics, and then we got the high school involved, and then we started branching out and bringing in guest speakers and things like that. But I've got a great assistant who's a lieutenant, Darren Laughlin on the department, Mike, that he helps with the hands-on stuff, and then we bring in some guest instructors. And I've gotten myself to the point now where I've been around this long enough to know what's right, what's wrong, and most of it is about taking a step back and just using some common sense before you jump, kind of thing. And it's really about teaching the kids that, if you're nervous, say so. If you don't feel comfortable, say so. If you got questions, say so. Nobody's here to judge you. So it's all the peer pressure stuff of growing up, basically, except you impress upon them that, hey, now somebody else's life is in your hands. So if you don't know, say so. And if you don't know, then we need to figure it out, and we need to teach you the skills to do that. And I don't know, through this program, it really is morphed into more than fire. And there's I'm fortunate, and I feel great that I've had the opportunity, because we have 8 kids on the cadet program, and most of the time maybe 2 or 3 are there for the reason of fire, and some are there for other reasons. Some are there because they like lights and sirens, and some are there because let's face it, I mean, times are different than when we grew up, so home is not that great, and some are there because their buddy is there, and so you have to be able to pick that out, and I tend to gravitate towards the students that basically maybe home's not there, maybe school's not their thing, and we really incorporate and enforce that the fire department is secondary, school, family, and extracurricular activities come first, and if you're not upholding one, then you can't participate in the other. And some say it's too harsh, but we've had a great outcome with it, and the schools are very impressed with it. And it's you have to look at each individual as they come through the door, and this is what I want to have Tom speak at a little bit. He's a lot better at this than I am. Again, I'm a rookie at this, but I can make it sound good. Tom was an educator for a number of years, and one of the greatest things that I remember, besides maybe keeping kids on the straight and narrow through our program, was when a student said to me, JD, he said, I'm failing out of a class. He says, I don't know how to do this. I bomb my tests all the time. He's like, I don't want to take a test in the fire department. I was like, buddy, it's part of it. Like, if you're going to do firefighting, you've got to, there's bookwork that goes with it nowadays. It's different. I was like, so we got to give you the skills on how to take a test. And so, in case you haven't figured it out, I'm pretty upfront. So I said, okay.
You don't say.
I said, so here's the deal, all right? I said, do you need help reading that? I'm like, you got to be honest with me. I'm like, I don't care if you can't read the words. I don't care. I'm like you. I can't. Like, don't be embarrassed of it. You are who you are. It doesn't make it. So he finally was like, well, I do have a tough time reading that. So I said, okay, we'll get you somebody to read it. And we got him somebody to read it. He understood it and comprehended it during class, and then he would go and pick the answer, and it would just be outlandish. It's like, man, you know what the answer is. Why you get? Well, there's a lot of answers here that I could choose from, and that could be right. And I said, pardon my French, I said, okay, so 2 out of those 4 answers, 2 of them are bullshit. So just cross those out right away, and then figure out from that, make an educated guess. And do it that way. And so that's what he did. And lo and behold, he went from a 40 to a 75 or 80, and he came back to me and he said, I tried that trick you told me about the bullshit when I did a test in school, he said, and it really worked. He said, I told my teacher about it. I said, well, I hope you didn't tell her I said it was two out of the four were bullshit. She probably didn't appreciate. Well, actually, he says I kind of did, but so whatever sticks. But I mean, Tom, through your time in education, I think a lot of people will, the fire department's the fire department. It's not really that important, but I think it is, and I think it's, even older guys we're teaching the skills how to be better test takers and things, and it's all, I mean, when you get into the classroom setting, it's always people tend to hesitate, and so what can you speak to about my experience? I mean, obviously you've seen plenty of experiences like that.
Yeah, so being a tech teacher, we saw students with disabilities all the way through my tenure down there, and so I try to help Jason during his class with some of my experiences and stuff I learned going through BTC to become a tech teacher, and it's tough, and it is. It's you got to teach this somewhere. They're missing it in school. I don't know where they're missing it when they get to our age group, basically the 16s and up. So it's like somebody didn't teach you how to to do math. Like put 1, 2, 3, 4, and then cross it. That's 5. I mean, you gotta feel for them because they missed it somewhere. And will it help them in life? Sure. I mean, I had a student that wasn't really good at adding and subtracting. They're brought up with technology nowadays. They don't need to know those old schools, and I think that's where they miss the old school way to learn. So I taught them how to, we were trying to do bills in the classroom, figure out a bill. So I was like, well, if you can put 5, and then it's 5, 10, 15, 20, you can count on your fingers, toes, hands. I don't care how you do it. You just got, you got to come up with a solution to it, and you have to figure out your best way. Well, come test taking time, like Jason said, all of a sudden I look over and this student's doing the little X, and I was like, wow. And a couple years later, he came back and he saw me, and he was working at a gas station. Lost their power. You have no technology when you lose power, but they still had to stay open and sell, the beer, the cigarettes, or whatever they, sodas, candy bars. He came in and he said, Mr. Shannon, I just want to let you know I had to use that technique you showed me. He said, it took me a lot of paper to get through the 8-hour shift with no power, but he says, I got through it by doing your technique. It's like, see, there's always a different way to do something. Just think about a different way. They're teaching you down the mainstream path. Try go right, go left. I don't know. I don't care. As long as the answer comes out, 4 at the bottom of the sheet, I don't care how it comes out. And really, the fire service like that, right? We can teach them, right, Jason? And this is the way it's going to work. Well, every scene's a different scene. I mean, there's not 1 through 5 that you're going to do when you get there. It's 3 might come in all of a sudden, and you're like, oh no, what do I? There's a lot of changing and adapting, and so I'm helping Jason now. I mean, he took on a big burden with the cadet program. That's what helps us keep our rosters full is by a cadet program. Yeah. I mean, if you catch 1 out of every class, I mean, that's 1 more young firefighter. It's a young man's sport, I'll tell you, or lady sport. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm open to either or. So, I had a daughter of my own, and I taught her there's nothing that I can do that you can do, right? I mean, you're a lady. You're coming into the world. You do whatever you want to do. If you want to turn wrenches, or do you want to, good with books, you figure out your own path, right?
Sure.
So,
and I
so let me.
Go ahead. No, I think that's.
No.
You guys are confusing me.
I think that the fire department shows these kids too that you don't have to go to college to be successful. A trade is somebody in a trade is just as successful as somebody that went to college. Like, when you're working at the fire department, the job you're doing, that's a pretty important job. You're saving somebody's life. You're saving somebody's home. It doesn't get any more important than that, mister. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
Definitely.
So with just a few minutes left, I want to ask a question. So we've done 2 episodes talking about and kind of translating what we saw on TV on Blue Bloods with this detective. We're still, when we're at the recording of this, still yet to see where that episode ends up and what happens. So maybe in the next podcast, Jason will throw that out there. But I want to ask Tom first and then JD. This has been great information, and hopefully the people listening to this, whether it's a parent, somebody with a disability, whether it's somebody with a disability, a family member, a friend, what if they want to get involved in the fire service, right? So that's what we could speak to with you guys is the fire service, right? So what if they want to get involved? Tom, I'm going to ask you from a leadership standpoint, what would be the best way for someone to come in and have that conversation? And JD, I would ask you from your experience to follow up, what would be the best way to approach it from somebody with a disability to kind of maybe reduce some of the friction that you guys experienced from your 2 sides at the beginning. So Tom, why don't you kind of take that and run with it for a second?
Well, I think you got to go to your local fire department or first response or whatever you want to become a member of, and then check with that chief to see if there's a spot and see if, can we fit you in with your disability? So JD knows that he can't come to the fire scene. He's not going to, burst in with a hose and go inside the house in a matter of seconds, because, sometimes that's what we got is just basically seconds. So you have to know really your limitations. You have to be honest with yourself of saying, I'd really like to be on the fire department, but, depending on what your disability is. So if it's a mental disability that, can you process fast enough to be safe? Can somebody with a physical disability, can I actually do the work? It's hard work out there. I won't say it's not.
Yeah. So a little self-evaluation, come prepared to say, here's what I can do and what I can't do, kind of like JD did with the truck situation, right?
Yes.
Right.
And then, whatever department it is, do they have a spot for you? Do they have a spot for, maybe I need somebody in my office for administration purposes. Maybe I need somebody to help teach a cadet program. But knowing that my limitations is not going to allow me to get to the fire scene, to be the guy going inside with fire around you and smoke around you. A lot of it, if you want to do it as a career, there's a PT test that you have to do, and it's pretty strenuous to get through the PT test and the knowledge part. So, to be a career firefighter, you're going to go, this is what you want to do for a living. There's a couple tests that you have to do. One's a written test and one's a PT test. But on the fire service, on the volunteer side, right, we all do this for the fun of it, basically, I guess you want to say. We're serious about it. We're really serious about it. But if you didn't love it, you're not going to do it, because the pay is not very good at this stuff, as a volunteer. But, we work for our community. We love our community. Jason and I grew up here in town, and fire department was right next door to my mother's house. So, as a little kid, I saw them little fire trucks going down through there, and I was like, "Oh boy, I want to do that someday." Right? It's the red light and siren thing. You just see all those fire trucks going everywhere, and then back then there was no radio, so they wrote it on a board. So I'd have to, Mom would say, "Run over and see where the fire is." So I'd have to wait till cars got moved around, then I could run down and come back and tell her where the fire was. And so it kind of hooked you that way. My neighbor was a fireman, so I watched him go. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Somebody with a disability, you got to learn your disability, and can I be able to do it, right?
So a little self-awareness, a little preparedness, and you can come in and maybe have a conversation about what's available, what might be possible.
Yeah, so obviously we have a pretty good administrator going on at ours that keeps us intact, and he's on the ball with things.
JD,
called me last night.
2 minutes on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, finish.
No, I just think that, again, like you said, you've got to be aware of your abilities. Don't let your disability stop you, but be realistic, and don't take it personal. Michael and I have talked about this off air, and I'm just going to put it out here because, and I think you and I, Tom, have talked about this. So, for as much as I and some other folks try to push people to get involved with their disabilities and have a chance, the way you approach the situation, you could make it great for yourself. You could make it not so great for yourself, but as a whole, in the disabled community, you're also making it either great for the rest of us or not so great for the rest of us. So just be mindful of that and understand that if you hear the words like, I don't think this is going to fit, it's not because somebody is trying to be disrespectful to you or discourage you. It may be that they don't understand, and maybe you can try to help them understand, but it may be that they know something that you don't know, and so if you receive that no, at least they gave you the time to think about it. And then just say, well, is there anything else I can do? Is there, do you have a fundraiser that maybe I could, come and help with? Or, there are a million things. I mean, but you don't, I know it's nice to be a member, and I'm very thankful to be a member, and I'm thankful that I get to do as much as I do on the fire department, but being a member is not really what's important. The thing that's important is I'm doing the most I can every day of the week, 365 with my disability. And so maybe the fire service just doesn't fit your disability. You got to find something that fits your disability. Just like a job fits your personality, you got to find something that fits your disability. And I was just, I know it sounds weird, but I was fortunate enough to have the disability the way I do, so it fits my disability, and I'm thankful for that every day, and I'm thankful for the Brotherhood, and I'm thankful that these guys go out of their way to make me a member of the Pittsford Fire Department. We talked about the other night, Michael, about hopping up in the truck for a parade, and how are we going to get you up in there? I don't worry about that too much, but I can tell you when I'm up in there, I'm pretty proud that I'm there. So.
That's awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the feedback and the honesty. I think one of the things that the listeners appreciate of this show is how candid we are, and it was great to hear kind of the whole perspective and the real picture. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. And JD, until next time, I'm Mike D.
I'm JD.
And I'm Tom Shannon.
And this has been Beyond the Label. That's it.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Label. If you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, email contact@adaptivemartialarts.org. Beyond the Label is produced by JD Production and presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts.